Welcome to Monsters and Multiclass, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Ellie.
I'm Jared Warnagle.
And I'm Will Melton.
And on this episode, we are taking a look at the Drowned Master from the Ghosts of Saltmarsh.
Yes, the Drowned Master. Tethered to a powerful source of magic that prevents them from traveling, the Drowned Master commands other drowned ones, compelling them to serve as agents in its dark plot. It says it retains its torso, arms, and head shape, but its legs are split into shadowy tentacles, so we can only assume this is more person-y. In terms of art, we don't get any, so we don't know exactly what it looks like. This monster is from the Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and while it has a specific tie to that adventure, we're going to keep this a little more setting agnostic. So we don't get from the description of the Drowned Master an immediate dark plot or motivation to the creature, but this could fill in as any generic evil you may need near the water, and it also has a very much a zombie vibe to it. Ellie, I'll let you kick things off with going through the stat block here.
Sure. So the Drowned Master is challenge rating 9. It's a medium undead chaotic evil. Armor class of 14, hit points of 157, and speed of 30 feet. Strength 17, Dex 12, Con 16, Intelligence 9, Wisdom 14, and Charisma 12. I always feel like I stumble through the stats there. They're like cumbersome to read. In every monster. Saving throws of Con plus 7 and Wisdom plus 6, and Perception plus 10 for skills. They're immune to poison and the poison condition. Dark vision out 60 feet. And it understands the languages of new in life, but it actually can't speak. So it has a few kind of passive features bound together. The Drowned Master shares its mind with every other drowned one within 1 mile of it, and can communicate its thoughts and observations to them instantaneously and without limitation. As a cold aura at the start of each of its turns, each creature within 5 feet of it takes 1d10 cold damage. A creature that touches the Drowned Master or hits with a melee attack within 5 feet of it takes 1d10 cold damage as well. I love these type of things. The Remoraz, which we talked about somewhat recently, has the opposite of this, and I feel like it always adds cool dynamic to the fight where you need to make the decision about staying there and beating up on it and taking the hits or trying to get away. Just adds a neat kind of layer. So I'm always happy to see it. And then it has Undead Fortitude. This is really similar to Zombie's ability. If the damage reduces the Drowned Master to 0, it must make a con save with a DC of 5 plus the damage taken, unless the damage is radiant or from a critical hit. On a success, the insta drop to 1. A DC of 5 plus the damage taken is probably going to generally be pretty low. Usually when you start to see like crazy, like PCs putting out crazy numbers, it's when like through multi-attack and things like that.
Sure.
And this is like just the last attack. So if you hit them for 10 damage with your sword, the DC is 15. They have plus 7 to their con saves.
So it's like a 60% chance or so of succeeding on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it might come up. I'll be honest, I feel like Undead Fortitude works well for minions. For what I would consider a boss creature, it's not going to be like that, I guess, amazing of like a moment. I don't know. It works better in numbers because the more things that you have, the higher chance that a couple of them stay up. If the boss lives another round, it lives another round. But I still feel like you all can put out like 14s or 15s on damage at level 6 where you're at right now. So it's very possible that you all, you roll a high damage and it doesn't work, and that's fine. It's not like the fight is really dependent on Undead Fortitude coming to fruition.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point because when it's the minions, the kind of idea of the minions is it's distracting the party. They are having to take actions and attacks to try and kill the minions. And if they manage to stay up an extra round, that's really frustrating and annoying for the party. If the boss does, you're right, someone else is just going to hit it again next turn because that's what you're doing. You're killing the boss. It's not... And once the boss is dead, it's over. It's where if you kill the random zombie, it's not over. So sure, that's a really good point. It doesn't quite fit here.
Yeah, I'd almost want to see something that is like a more beefed up Undead Fortitude, but I don't know exactly how I'd tweak that. Something that brings it to higher than 1 HP, though. Yeah, regenerate's probably the best way.
But
It's just
basically, just take it from anything else. Where if it didn't take the damage type, where it to stop its regeneration, even if it goes to 0, it'll regenerate again on its turn.
yep.
So you would have to do radiant or kill with a crit.
Yeah. Now that would be, well, party dependent, but very difficult.
Yeah.
Or a
Well,
no, or
or
very
really
simple, or
easy.
very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're doing that, you probably want to add 2 damage types, radiant and fire, maybe. I don't know. It's not
Maybe.
that
I'm
important, but
expecting to fight this thing underwater though. Right? Like, isn't
yeah,
that kind of the vibe that it gives off? Yet it doesn't
yes,
have a swim speed.
interesting. And the other drowned, which are this thing's minions, and we'll cover them briefly. Have that stuff's covered, where like they could walk on the bottoms and they're not impacted by the water, and they don't have disadvantage. This thing doesn't. You're right.
Yeah. So I guess maybe it's fighting on the surface of the water. I'm not really sure what the intent is for where this thing is fought.
Definitely near water.
Water
Water
adjacent
adjacent.
on the
Yes.
coast, maybe,
Yeah.
so
Comes
that
onto
it
your ship. I mean, it's specifically for this
okay,
adventure. Like, I mean, it's Tamarot's fate. That's where you fight it.
right? Which I'm sure I
Which
could open that up
whatever the
and
hell
look
that is.
and
Yeah.
whatever, but we said we're not doing that.
It's a
Right.
boat.
I was gonna
Oh,
say, based on that name, I'm assuming it's a wrecked boat.
Yeah, the drowned master is the captain.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like a boat wrecked in the shallows. It's not completely submerged, just half submerged and waterlogged, and that sort of thing. I can see that.
Yeah. I really like the idea of fighting this thing in water, though. So I'm just gonna either give it a swim speed or give it the bottom treader that every single one of its minions
I
have.
would just give it that. It
Yeah,
seems like a weird oversight that it doesn't, and
yeah.
we'll cover that in a little bit. All right, actions. It has multi attack. The Drowned Master makes 2 attacks, one with its great sword and one with its life draining tentacle, which is really poorly named. The great sword is a +7 to hit, reach of 5 feet. On a hit, 2d6 plus 3 slashing, plus 4d6 cold damage, and the target must succeed on a con save, throw, or contract Bluerot. Which, do you want to cover that now or at the end of the stat block?
Let's finish the stat block and we'll talk
Yeah.
about Blue Rot.
Okay. Yeah. Blue Rod has its own little sidebar. We'll cover that. Life draining tentacles +7 to hit, melee attack, reach of 15 feet. On a hit, does 2d6 plus 3 necrotic damage. The target must succeed on a DC 15 con saving throw, or its hit point maximum is reduced by an amount equal to the damage taken. The target dies if this effect reduces its hit point maximum to 0. The reduction lasts until the target finishes a long rest. On a failed save, the target also contracts Blue Rot.
So why'd you say
So
that's
the reason,
misnamed?
because life draining, usually I would think it would heal the drowned master.
Oh, okay.
That's usually when you see that in games, like a life drain skill. It's usually steals life from your target and heals you.
That's
That's what
true.
I thought it was going to be, and I like that a little better.
Yeah, you could throw it on. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not an absurd amount to
No.
heal per round. It'd be 10, and it would give that regeneration feel like we mentioned earlier, instead of the undead fortitude. I
Right.
like that. That'd be a good way to change this.
Yeah.
And it's also only if you fail the Constitution saving throw.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean it's lowering someone's maximum HP 2d6 plus 3. Every turn can get definitely troublesome at the levels you're fighting. This is challenge rating 9. You're probably fighting this level 7.
Yeah, probably have
Yeah, I
on
mean
average
you don't
about
have.
45 ish
I
health. We'll
was gonna say
say.
yeah, we're on level 6, and that's around what we're at. So I mean you could get low fast, and then that starts to get scary. You just outright die. If
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would take. Basically, we're saying though it would be about 4
4.
to 5 rounds. We'll say to actually
Yeah.
drop somebody to 0 with it. It's possible. I guess I could see this fight potentially going on that long. Now,
Yeah.
should you focus on one person and are they going to fail every single Constitution saving throw? Probably
Right.
not.
That's a good
But
point.
that to me is a good thing. That means that you can use this the way it's intended, and you're not going to accidentally cheese the fight against your party. Like it's a pretty good drain. It does a good amount of damage, but it's not like it's the 68 drain and your max hit point max is reduced there. Realistically, you're going to get 0 from other means before your hit point max is reduced to 0.
Yeah. If this is played where it's not a threat to actually killing a party member, it's kind of a counter argument against it is it's almost then like worthless because healing in combat is rare, especially unless you have like a life cleric and someone built for it. Generally speaking, you're not doing big healing in combat to getting people up to their maximum. You're healing them when they're really, really low or ideally already down to get them back up, which is not going to get them to their hit point maximum. So their hit point maximum being 10 or 20 points lower at that point doesn't really matter. And then this kind of sounds like it's set up as a boss fight. So once this thing is dead, you're probably done for the day. And then you take a long rest and it comes back.
Hit point max reduction, you're spot on. Hit point max reduction is a mental thing that adds stress to the players without actually being a threat. Almost
Right.
90% of the time. You're
Unless
entirely
it's
right.
early in an adventuring day.
Right.
You're delving a dungeon and like the second room you go in has something that lowers your hit point maximum by 20. And like then that does kind of suck. And it's like you're stuck for the day.
Unless you have like a greater restoration or find
Right.
something
Yeah, you
to get
blow
rid
in a
of
fifth
it.
level slot. Yeah.
Right, which that's difficult to justify. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, just kind of I don't even know if it's a problem. Like, to me, that's always been the point of hit point max reduction in a boss fight. It's just it makes it ups the tension. Yes, it's not probably going to come into play, but the option's there. It's on the table. My hit point max has been reduced down to 10. I'm getting scared, and that's it's another tool, I guess, to up that tension, even if it doesn't usually become a actual issue.
Right.
It could, though, in the sense that if you have like a life cleric, we played with that last campaign, and I could see hit point max reductions definitely hurt there because when they were healing, it was getting people up to half their max HP. Well, your max HP's been reduced. I can't heal you as much as I used to be able to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Also, I mean, the Drowned Master, this thing doesn't have to be a boss fight. It's not a legendary creature. It doesn't have layer actions and legendary actions and resistances. If you throw it as a kind of trash mob, quote unquote, earlier on in a dungeon at like a level 15 party,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to lower some resources, lower some maximum health.
Yeah, the only thing that
to
I
do
would
its job.
only thing I would change if I was putting this up against a higher level party is just change the armor class, because armor class of 14 against a level 15 party is just paper. Like it doesn't even need an armor class at that point.
Right.
Everyone's got plus 11 around then, plus 12. It'd just be just a joke.
Right. All right, and then finally, as an action, they have Necrotic Ink. This is not part of the multi-attack, so if they're doing this, it's their whole action. It's a recharge of 5 or 6. So after they use it at the start of every turn, roll a d6 out of 5 or 6, they get it back. The Drowned Master discharges foul ink in front of itself in a 30-foot cone. Each creature in the ink must make a 15 con save or take 6d8, not 68. Average of 27. That's really
That didn't help.
hard. No.
Average of 27 damage, you roll 6d8.
Yes.
Yeah.
Necrotic damage on a failed save or half as much on a successful one. A creature that fails a saving throw is blinded until the start of its next turn and contracts Bluerot. That's like a common thing of all the drown. Every single thing they do to you gives you Bluerot. So what is this Bluerot, you ask? Or do we want to talk about Necrotic Ink for a minute?
I mean, I don't know how much there is to talk about. It's pretty straightforward. 30-foot cone.
It's a good AoE.
Yeah, good AoE. Does pretty solid damage for its level. I like the fact that it blinds as well if the creature fails the saving throw. It's an interesting way to start the fight, and terrifying if it's used twice in a fight.
Yep. Just getting squid inked.
Yep. So what is this Bluerot? Ellie
Yes,
has
this
asked.
Bluerot. Yes, it is a disease that targets humanoids. A well-effective Bluerot, a victim grows grotesque blue boils on their face and back. The disease is carried by undead, including the drowned, and victims most often acquire it through wounds caused by infection creatures. If you get it, the boils manifest in 1d4 hours, causing the victim's constitution and charisma scores to decrease by 1d4 each to a minimum of 3. This is quickly followed by a fever and a tingling in the extremities. An infected creature is vulnerable to radiant damage and gains the ability to breathe underwater. Interesting thing to note is the Drowned Master is not vulnerable to radiant damage and does not actually have the ability to breathe underwater.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a good point, isn't it?
Yep.
There's some gaps
Disconnect
in the
here.
Drowned Master, if we're being honest. I think you're supposed to assume you get that stuff. You're also supposed to assume it's a squid. So
I guess it does. I mean, it does say it has
No,
tentacles. It mentions the
Well,
tentacles.
it's half zombie, half octopus. Like Ursula, if
Yeah,
Ursula
sure.
was a zombie sea captain.
I think she was.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
actually watch the extended Little Mermaid.
The extended cut, yeah.
Right. Read the Little Mermaid.
Original
Compendium.
Brothers
Yeah.
Grimm.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's also interesting because there's a thing like that you give your undead creatures its undead nature. It's
yes.
you don't need food or water, and it's just like not here. It's just not here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you could assume that they don't need to breathe because they are undead. But yeah, you're right. It usually calls that out.
Adding on, though, this vulnerable to radiant damage from a player perspective kind of doesn't matter if you're fighting drowned. They don't do radiant damage. It's probably not going to come up, to be completely honest.
No, but it doesn't go away right away. So at the end of each long rest, an infected creature makes a DC 12 con save. On a success, the victim regains 1 point of constitution and 1 point of charisma lost to the disease. If the infected creature regains all of the points lost to the disease, it is cured. Other effects that raise the victim's ability scores do not cure the disease. On a failed save, the victim takes 48 necrotic damage as the boils burst and spread. A creature reduced to 0 by this damage cannot regain hit points until the disease is cured, though it can be stabilized as normal.
Which
this
probably
kicks
won't come
around
up for a
bit.
player.
In hitting 0, no.
And yeah, okay, I was trying to think. So if you had gotten Bluerot from the boss fight at the end, and your hit point max was reduced a good amount, as long as, let's just say it was reduced to 18, and then you take your 18 necrotic damage, that's like, what happens first? What's the order of operations there? Because this says at the end of a long rest. So at the end of a long rest over, I would assume hit point max goes away, HP comes back, correct? And then this happens of you take your 48 damage.
Yeah.
So there's not even a chance for that to come up and be like a problem the next day.
Right.
More
Yeah,
just
so
a
this
mild
Bluerot
inconvenience.
feels more thematic than mechanically punishing. Like, I mean, it's not great, but you're right. Vulnerability to radiant damage generally doesn't come up much. I just feel like even regardless of fighting the drowned, maybe this is just a random thing in a dungeon with a whole menagerie of creatures. You don't see a lot of radiant damage in monster stat blocks. You as the DM could of course set it up for that.
Right.
Maybe that's one way to do it.
Right. Like the
It's a
drowned
weird
that
and
have
mean
set up
thing
a
to
trap
do.
where they give you Bluerot and then put you through a trap that releases radiant damage. How they got access to it? Shrug. I don't know. I'm the DM. Like,
Right.
because I said they did.
And then the Constitution and Charisma being reduced by 1, or 1d4, it's not great. Like a d4 can be obviously really bad, but if they're like a wizard, they're not going to count that much. A fighter, their con being lowered will kind of suck, but it's not going to be absolutely terrible, and they probably have good enough con saving throws to get it back quickly. And then if you only lower it by 1, depending on where you are, in that, it may not even matter.
Right. Lowering your constitution, does that affect your hit point max immediately?
I was wondering that.
I don't have an answer. I'm gonna say no
don't
because that's
either.
confusing bookkeeping. If
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I dropped it by 2, okay, so I'm level 6, so I guess I lose 12 HP or like what, whatever. That seems a little bit. I don't think there's any precedent for that as far as I know.
Well,
I'm going to say
usually
there
con
is.
changes are retroactive. If you bump up your constitution, you
That's
retroactively
true.
get those hit points. If you take like the toughness feat at a higher level, you retroactively get, or harder, whatever the feat is, the one that gives extra
Toughness
health. Yeah.
or tough, either way. That's a good
So
point.
yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that complicated of bookkeeping. To go, yeah, I'm level 6 and I lost
Yeah, when I was
Two.
saying it out loud, it didn't sound too bad.
So, yeah, it's like, no, that's not that tough. Just put a little
But I'd already
grounding
committed to
sheet.
saying it, so.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I mean, then that does and can suck a lot. That's another way of reducing the HP of somebody. But as you said, you may just drop by 1, and it's not a big deal. But if you go -2 and you're, as I said, losing 12 HP, that can be at that level about a quarter of your HP, more or less. I mean, if we're talking about average of 45.
Yeah.
So that's pretty bad. One thing that is interesting as well about the Bluerot to me is that, and we'll, I guess, maybe see it more as we talk about the minions that I'm sure we'll get into in a minute, is that everything has a chance to give you Bluerot. So usually when we look at diseases, I brush them aside because I'm like, all it takes is a lesser restoration or a paladin doing 5 points of lay on hands and it's gone, which is true for the Bluerot. And there's ways to get around that with diseases to make them more interesting, like needing a piece of something, like finding the vaccine before a lesser restoration works. I don't think that's necessary with Bluerot, because if you are fighting these things, you're going to get Bluerot at some point, and if you cure it, you're just going to get it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that from a disease perspective, because it makes it so the players have to really make the call. Is it worth a second level spell to get rid of this right now, to get some of that health back, to get the charisma back? If you're a charisma caster, that could be really important.
Yeah.
If you're a paladin and you have your auras and your charisma gets reduced by 4 and you're no longer giving that additional +2 to everybody who's near you, that means your friends are going to fail more of these saves and everyone will eventually get Bluerot. I mean, so I think this is actually one of the most interesting diseases in terms of how often it comes up that I have seen in a 5th edition stat block. In terms of the actual thing itself, yeah, there's some weak points to it, but this is the best disease I've seen done.
I would also add that you can not going to make this show up out of nowhere, because like lesser restorations and lay on hands and stuff like that out of combat is whatever. But if they fought something like 2 hours ago and you rolled your 2 or whatever, you can not tell them this is about to show up.
You're saying the disease part, because it takes a couple hours to show.
It's like, oh, you failed your check. It's like nothing happens.
Right.
Nothing, you should not know anything about this. And then maybe during a fight they do manifest, which would be spookier, harder to deal with, and more dangerous.
It's a good point.
Sure.
Yeah, the fact that you get the ability to breathe underwater does just kind of make me laugh, though, because it almost makes it a benefit to just have this, especially if you're going to the source of these creatures and you're going to have to be underwater a lot.
Yeah.
It's like,
I kind of like
no.
that. Like, you purposely seek it out. Like, you just can't do anything.
No,
it's like
Go ahead.
In Dark Souls, there's this whole area where there's ghosts, and like they can hit you, but you cannot interact with them unless you curse yourself. And cursing yourself cuts your HP in half. Then it turns out there's a whole item get around it, and it makes it really easy. But I liked the concept of that.
Yeah, and
so this is kind of like that.
Right, if you don't have anybody who's able, because I know we've done underwater adventures a good amount of times, and it usually goes quickly to, all right, here's some potions of water breathing, here's some magic item to let you swim. I mean, let's cut through most of this. If you don't give people that, then being able to breathe underwater for an extended period is not something that's just readily available. I mean, there's a couple spells and whatnot, but if you don't have them, you don't have them. If you're in a town that doesn't have potions of water breathing to just hand out because the town is stricken with Bluerot and everyone's dying and not able to make potions, then all right,
all right, here's a good idea. You do the water thing. It's like, oh, we're going to do a water level. It's like, all right, everybody, we got to go buy water breathing potions. But they're not water breathing potions. They're improv ones made out of Bluerot.
Oh,
and
man.
it's like some sketchy merchants like, oh, it'll only be 25 gold a pop, but there's some side effects. And they're like, all right, whatever.
Weird that he keeps laughing when he says side effects, but dang, this is a good deal.
Incredible. It's 25 gold.
That's a good point. I mean, and that could be done totally absent of the drowned or anything, if you just wanted to make this a kind of gotcha. Of course, then it your party then basically has to rely on the fact that they have the water breathing now, and they've probably already committed to swimming or being underwater, and you've now given them kind of a negative that they have to deal with throughout the adventure.
Also interesting the disparity here between how strong this will impact your PCs versus NPCs. Like your PCs,
Yes.
this is not life threatening to your PCs. They will be fine. They will be able to continue adventuring. The 48 necrotic damage, if they fail, will suck, but a lot of times they won't fail and they'll get healed back anyways. And that's fine. A commoner, this thing is going to rip through commoners.
Yeah.
The commoner cannot take 48 necrotic damage. That's instant death.
Right. And in terms
and
of like
a DC 12 con saving throw, like I'm pretty sure they don't have any saving throws. Yeah, so it's a less than 50% chance.
It's a 10 and their con is reduced.
Yeah.
Like because it's at minimum.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah, I mean, and they have to pass it multiple times in a row because if they rolled like it's 3 or 4 on that D4, they have to pass it 3 or 4 times in a row without failing. Otherwise, they're just dead.
Yeah.
Well, no.
So in that sense, it's like this really big, scary disease.
You can't.
Well, no, they're dead. They will take 48 necrotic damage. They'll take an average of 18 damage.
A specific commoner,
yes. Yes.
Your random NPCs, you can they're now dying of Bluerot, quote unquote.
Sure. Well, you could say that. So it says a creature is reduced to 0 HP by this damage, can't regain HP until the disease is cured, though it can be stabilized as normal. So that sets up a good thing for the party of an NPC that they care about has this. They've hit 0 HP. They can stabilize them for the day, but they know that the next day they're going to have to make this save again. If they take damage, I guess they'd make death saves again, basically. So it's like something that they have to deal with every day.
Right.
Because they basically get a death failure if they the next day take it, then they take damage. It depends on how into the rules you want to get. Honestly, you could just say they're going to die. They're going to die soon if you don't figure it out, or you have to show up every day. Get the cure.
Yeah. Or if their HP is just low enough. Like I said, the commoners, they have 4 health. So it does not matter if any of this. They'll take 18 damage. That puts them their
double
maximum negative. Yeah.
Yep. Good point.
So just dead.
Just dead. So yeah, I think besides the weirdness of the vulnerable to radiant damage, and I guess I'm kind of with you, Ellie. The idea of being able to breathe underwater, like as a benefit from this, is it sets you up for seeking it out in a way which can be really neat. I stand by what I said, though I'm usually pretty against diseases in 5th edition because they're just too simple to hand wave. I think this is a good one. Look at some of these minions and such.
Sure.
All right, so looking at these minions, we've got 3 different ones, the ascetic, the assassin, and the blade, that all kind of fit into class roles, the ascetic being a monk, the assassin being a rogue, kind of, and then the blade being a fighter. I'll talk about the blade first because it's challenge rating 2 and honestly changes just nothing. This is a minion in its purest form. It has an AC of 10, HP 45. It has the bottom treader ability, like we mentioned, which is the drown blade cannot swim and it sinks to the bottom of any body of water. It takes no penalties to its movements or attacks underwater, and it is immune to the effects of being underwater at a depth greater than 100 feet. So all of these minions have that bottom treader ability. They all have bound together, which is the shared mind that we talked about with the drowned master. And they all have undead fortitude, which, as I mentioned earlier, I think fits a little bit better on these minions. They also share the damage immunity to poison and the conditioned immunity to poison. So I mentioned the drowned blade has just about nothing to talk about. I stand by that. For actions, it makes 2 rusted longsword attacks. They're longsword attacks.
1d8 plus 3. And then they cause Bluerot.
Yes. DC 12 con save, or you contract Bluerot. So good to throw on if you need some additional minions on the battlefield.
Just distract your party, absorb hits, do a bit of damage, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
That undead fortitude makes them annoying. Potentially.
Yeah, I mean, with 45 HP too, they're not usually going to go down in like 1 or 2 hits.
Right.
I guess I just no matter what, I just want something more interesting than just I make 2 attacks per round. Oh well. But We have the other two that actually do have some things going on with them. So the drowned ascetic is all basically the same. Armor class of 13, though, HP of 75, challenge rating 3. It makes 3 unarmed attacks. So as mentioned, it's kind of like a monk. And then it has a reaction, the dexterous target. So the drowned ascetic adds 3 to its AC against 1 ranged attack that would hit it. To do so, the drowned ascetic must see the attacker. So this one's kind of interesting because to me, these circumstantial bonuses of like adding +2 as a reaction, adding +3 to reaction, generally don't sway the tide. But 3 is actually a pretty good bonus. I mean, it's just like shield is obviously a spell where you can add 5 to your AC for an entire round. This just does it for 1 attack.
And just a ranged attack.
Just a ranged attack, but keep in mind where you're probably going to fight these things. Underwater. And underwater ranged attacks get a little bit funky. Everything has disadvantage to start. So that's going to be very tough to hit unless you're using a crossbow. And even then you have to be...
Or a trident.
Or a trident. You're right. Spears, things that you can throw. But then it also has to be within its first range. So usually it's, first range. Then you have the second range where everything's disadvantage. Since these things can't swim, they're probably on the bottom of this body of water. And it would be really easy to sit 30 feet up and just take pot shots at these things. So having this reaction to add +3 for the times where the disadvantage ranged attack does go through seems like it will actually help a lot in getting the point across of how this minion's supposed to be used. You need to get close to it, and it needs you close to it in order to do its damage. So I think there was actually some good synergy there when taking into account, again, that you're going to be fighting underwater. Which, as usual, weird rules.
Additionally, the party might find out about the Bluerots and realize, hey, I don't want to get anywhere near these things. This helps prevent them from cheesing it with bows a little bit.
Right.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I don't think these things can be... because of the bottom charter, where it literally says they cannot swim, fighting them in an open body of water just seems like a recipe for an easy fight. You swim up 20 feet, and you kind of hover there, neutrally buoyant at 20 feet, taking ranged attacks down. Yeah, they're at disadvantage. Yeah, this thing can, for 1 attack, add 3 to its AC. But they literally have no recourse. They have no ranged attacks. They have no way to get to you.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. That's just
so this needs to be more
that's
like
a
fought
failing.
in like sunken ships where you cannot just leave, and if you do, then they're in cover. You can't get to sunken temples, ruined ancient cities, things like that.
Very good point. And that's still fitting of where you're going to be fighting them.
Totally,
but you're right. If it's just at the bottom of the ocean and they've got nowhere to hide, then yeah, you can just pick them off regardless.
Right.
Yeah, and just a reminder on underwater combat, because I always forget the rules for this. It's pretty quick. When making a melee weapon attack, a creature that doesn't have a swimming speed, or either natural or granted by magic or a disease, has disadvantage on the attack roll unless the weapon is a dagger, javelin, short sword, spear, or trident. It doesn't say a disease because Bluerot doesn't give a swim speed, sadly. Then we have a ranged weapon attack automatically misses a target beyond the weapon's normal range. Even against a target within a normal range, the attack has disadvantage unless the weapon is a crossbow, a net, or a weapon that is thrown like a javelin, spear, trident, or dart. And then creatures and objects fully immersed in water have resistance to fire damage. Does this mean it gets rid of the net's disadvantage?
Nothing gets rid of the net's disadvantage except
crossbow
the
expert. Obviously.
Yeah. I think it's just saying the net operates like normal.
Okay. I won't look into that too much then. Great. Okay, so that is the ascetic. That all this said, I don't really get why there's a monk version of this thing. So the flavor is dressed in tattered robes, its fist wrapped in long ribbons of rotting cloth. The drowned ascetic moves with alarming speed for an undead creature. Did this boat have monks on it? I guess
I'm thinking it must be something specific to this adventure, right? Yes, it was. They were transporting monks from the monastery. Maybe I don't know.
Sure. Let's I love this idea of like, let's try and think of what the story is, but not open the Saltmarsh book. Like, let's just figure it out.
I mean,
Right.
that's what the story is.
Is it? They're just bringing some monks across the ocean? Well, all
No,
right.
it's not really addressed, but there's like a temple next to it or something.
All right. It's
Why this guy's good at karate? I don't know. It's fun.
All right, so then we have the drowned assassin. So the drowned assassin stalks and kills in a grim pantomime of its former occupation, sneaking from shadow to shadow and appearing in the undead assault of Temerot's fate. It aims its barnacle-encrusted hand crossbow with deadly precision. Hidden behind a simple driftwood mask, this creature's face causes terror in mortal hearts when exposed. And it has a picture of their face. It's not that scary.
It looks like a zombie's face.
Yeah, I mean, like you've seen worse as an adventurer.
Yeah.
So challenge rating of 4. This one does have, I guess the monk had saving throws as well, but this has a saving throw of dex +5 and con +5. It has the stealth and intimidation skill, both +5. Same passives, bottom treader, bound together, undead fortitude. And its multi-attack, though, is at least somewhat interesting. As the drowned assassin makes 2 hand crossbow attacks or 2 dagger attacks, it can then dash, disengage, or hide. So like the rogue, but the difference is that usually rogues get that as a bonus action. This only gets to do those if it makes the multi-attack action.
Yeah.
Mildly interesting. Because, I mean, usually they just put that under a bonus action section. I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's effectively the same thing because it doesn't
Yeah.
have much else to do.
So has a hand crossbow, does 1d6 plus 3 piercing damage, and then 1d6 poison damage, and then the target must succeed on a DC 12 con saving throw or contract Bluerot. Then it has a dagger, does 1d4 plus 3 piercing damage, and then 2d8 poison damage. Same thing, DC 12 con save or Bluerot. No saving throw on the poison damage, though, for either of those. That just happens regardless. Then it has its reveal ability. The drowned assassin removes its mask, revealing its rotting face. Each creature of the assassin's choice within 30 feet of it that can see the assassin must succeed on a DC 13 wisdom saving throw or be frightened until the end of its next turn. I find
that exciting.
Yeah, I find frightened to be
Yeah.
super boring. I'm so tired of it as a condition, and I don't see how it really fits into the assassin theme very well.
No, nothing about this really feels like an assassin.
Besides the fact
Except
that it
for
does
the
poison
poison.
damage.
Yeah, that's about it. And then frightened for just one turn. It's like, you just deal with it. If you're
Yep.
like frightened for an entire battle and it's not going to go away, that's like a thing you need to deal with, especially if there's like you're frightened by the boss that you need to kill. Okay, that could be a problem. Frightened by a minion for 1 round.
Yeah.
I don't.
So
It's not that interesting.
I'm with you, and there's just not really any mechanical synergy that's coming from it. They don't get any benefit besides the fact that whoever fails has disadvantage on attacks and can't move closer to it. It doesn't really. I mean, it has some ranged options, so maybe that gives it a turn to stay at range while the paladin comes running up and beats the crap out of it. But it's just not that exciting. I think what would be a little bit more interesting is having some ability that either ones that I thought of are either like causing the players to sink or to like lose their swim speed. The idea being that the assassin's like dragging them down into the waters.
Yeah.
And like, maybe even giving the players the bottom treader condition that they have, where basically they can't swim and they have to walk along the bottom. The idea being that the assassin could pull people from the surface of the water into the water and then kill them. That to me feels assassin-y.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And this like skirts that fine line between like you want to think of them as like the Witcher drowners, and that's
Yeah.
like just a common in Kelpies and things like that, where they drag people down and drown them, but they're not drowners; they are drowned. And there's nothing about the stat block that makes them good at drowning people, other than they can't drown themselves.
Right.
That's it. But it's like drowning takes so fucking long in 5th edition.
Yeah, there's ways around that. Again,
Yeah.
an ability that makes you lose your breath. How about that?
Yes,
'Cause,
exactly.
'cause
Something like that. Would've
now
been
you
cool.
have your constitution score in rounds before you're dead. That's pretty scary. And especially if you've got Bluerot on top of that, that just reduced your con to, say 12 or 10, that'd be, I think it's +1. So like however your con score +1 in rounds is how much breath you have. I don't know if there's a minimum of
I
one
think
on
it's
that.
minute.
Is
I don't think
no,
it's
no, no.
round.
Once you're out of breath, it becomes
Oh,
rounds.
okay.
So you can
Yeah.
hold your breath. Yeah, it's underwater rules, everybody. Who remembers them? um, yeah, so it's you have your constitution modifier in minutes in breath that you can hold your breath. Once you run out of breath, you have that many rounds for your constitution modifier before you hit 0 HP. So if you have 3 constitution, you have 3 minutes of breath, you hit 0 on that, you've got 3 more rounds before you're 0 HP.
Okay.
So
It
in
didn't
that
show up
case,
searching in D&D Beyond, so I'm going to have to trust you.
if I'm wrong, then the comments will tell us.
Right.
So if this had an ability that was, they said, like, gets rid of any breath you have if you're holding your breath, or even if you can breathe underwater, it's like it takes away your ability to breathe underwater. Deal with it. It cures your Bluerot at the most inconvenient time. That might be a little bit strong, especially for a challenge rating 4. You tread into that like shadow territory of having a monster that's able to down somebody very quickly. But anything could be more interesting than this reveal where it shows its spooky, scary face and they're frightened.
For a round.
For a round. So, yeah, not super impressed. But, hey, as a minion for the final fight, completely ignoring the reveal ability, it packs a punch. It does some damage. It's another way to give Bluerot. I guess there's that.
I would give it a surprise attack. I'd give it a climb speed. I don't know what I would do with this.
Climb speed makes sense.
For it to like assassinate people. And now it's just like a ranged zombie. It's pretty dull.
Which that's a good way to make the ascetic a little less vulnerable, is having a drowned assassin with it.
Right.
Just so something has ranged. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I definitely, with the Drowned Master fight, have these other Drowned with them and have mixes of these leading up to weaken them and things like that. But I think you would definitely want to throw in other underwater creatures to fight just to make it more interesting. If you're just like, like an underwater dungeon crawl leading up to a fight with the Drowned Master or something, and all you're doing is fighting these 3 things over and over. Or you know what, actually, I would say the Drowned Master is probably better as like a mini boss.
For something that, and it does, so it's very ambiguous.
I feel like setting up like a dungeon or something,
Right. It's very ambiguous what gives the Drowned Master power. It says a powerful source of magic. That's really it. It's tethered to it, prevents it from traveling far. So I think that is where your final boss comes in, right? And Aboleth has tied these Drowned Masters, has tied this Drowned Master to its domain and is using the Drowned Master to communicate its goal to take over the town or do whatever it wants to do.
Right. Or Kraken.
Sure. Any actual powerful creature.
Yes.
Yeah, so in a way, the Drowned Master makes a really good minion.
Boy, yeah, I don't think I have anything else on this one.
Yeah, I don't think I do either. I guess the only thing left to say is that if you need to describe things like a spooky, scary pirate boat to set the scene, then you can use Describe for that. If you're a DM looking to jump behind the screen but worried about being at a loss for words, like we just were for a little bit, haha. Describe has a team of professional writers who are sitting right there beside you during your prep and in-game. They have cameras watching you while you prep to give you advice. No, you can search for different things on Describe, different settings, different scenes, and it gives you finely crafted box text in order to just more vividly describe your scene. If you are like me and homebrew much of what you create, then box text and descriptions and everything can be a very high cognitive load on your prep. and probably not where you want to spend all of your time. Love using Describe at the very least for some idea generation. A lot of times I can just rip it entirely, and my players are none the wiser. And they'll be none the wiser that you saved 10% on your subscription by using MM10 at checkout. They'll have no idea. I don't think they'll care either. I mean, unless you want to make them care.
I don't know, I'm always happy for my friends saving a bit of money.
That's true. That's true. Maybe tell them. Tell a friend. Tell a friend that you're
Yeah.
frugal.
Yeah.
Thank you, as always, to our patrons: Ed G, Muddleweight, Brian H, Greg A, Isaac M, Jeff W, Star Shinobi, Vincent M, Bob F, Joe P, Rick D, Sentinel Dude 20, Tyler S, Gray, Barons, Adam A, Rob K, Gray. Getting faster through it. If you want to support the show, you can head on over to monstersmulticlass.com/support, where you can find our other affiliates as well as our Patreon, where you can get early access to episodes, usually, as well as campaign diaries, notes on the stuff we talk about. Just throw those on there usually. And yeah, see our other affiliates. If you enjoyed what you watched, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell us how you would use the Drowned. If you've got any interesting ideas, changes you'd make to the stat blocks. Always love to hear that stuff. Love to have the discussions. And that's it. That's it. We're done.
Right? Yeah, as always, thanks for watching.